As no one from Zhang Yi's side made a move to grab the letter, the tension between the two parties stretched out considerably. The impatience and irritation of the bearded man was evident, but he still restrained himself from acting out. Zhang Yi smiled faintly, and as soon as he stretched out his hand, the letter disappeared into his alternate space. Seeing this, several mutants from Days City, including the bearded man, whistled. But the mocking and sarcastic expressions on their faces clearly showed that they didn't take Zhang Yi seriously. Wow, you actually have a rare space-related ability. Really good, the bearded man added coldly. An undeniable hint of disdain was laced in his voice as he stares at Zhang Yi. I'll give you 1 day to make a decision. In other words, well, there are only 19 hours from now. After all, we have to deduct the time we came here. Zhang Yi just stared back expressionlessly and didn't say a word as the bearded man touched his forehead with 2 fingers, gesturing his farewell. Well, goodbye, and good luck to you. This group of mutant soldiers immediately started their armored vehicles with their mocking smile still heavily itched on their faces and rumbled away without any hesitation or a backward glance. The 3 stood there motionless, staring at the 2 departing vehicles in silence. Looking a little indignant, Uncle Yu approached Zhang Yi and asked why he didn't kill them. After all, those guys were too arrogant. Zhang Yi just replied calmly that he wasn't interested in small fries. Also, if they act rashly, it will only make the enemy wary of them. Let's just see how things develop first. It's better to see what they will do when they believe their opponent is weak and defenseless. When the 2 black armored vehicles finally disappeared from sight, Zhang Yi, as composed and calm as ever, turned and walked towards the shelter like it was just another Tuesday. Although Uncle Yu and Liang Yu had seen this calculating version of Zhang Yi time and time again, they still couldn't help but be amazed. The 2 kept staring at Zhang Yi's back as Uncle Yu took a deep breath, his eyes showing deep admiration. He is only in his 20s, but he can remain so calm and patient when he encounters extremely difficult challenges. He rises to the occasion time and time again and comes out on top with ease every time. It's really rare, Liang Yu added jokingly. Isn't there a saying that goes, a dog that bites doesn't bark? Zhang Yi's voice suddenly came from the distance ahead. Don't think I can't hear what you 2 are saying because I'm far away. When the 2 heard Zhang Yi's comment, they immediately felt embarrassed and tentatively turned their gaze elsewhere nervously. Liang Yu stammers a little, trying to explain that the situation wasn't as it seems. I'm not saying bad things about you behind your back. She quickly covered her mouth afterwards. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows and looked back at her walking towards him. It's even more excessive to say it to your face. Liang Yu's face flushed slightly. I'm obviously praising you, saying that you are steady. I'll just take your praise as a compliment then. Zhang Yi shook his head speechlessly. Liang Yu, after all, was a teacher. His teacher. And her way of praising people was still somewhat special and odd. Well, I almost forgot that you were a physical education teacher. The 3 made their way back inside the shelter. Inside, Zhang Yi immediately catch sight of the person he was searching for in the lounging hall. Here, come with me to the infirmary after your meal. I have something I need your help with. Zhou Qi readily agreed, curious to know what the matter was. A while later in the infirmary, Zhang Yi took out the letter from his alternate space and asked Zhou Qi to check the file bag first. She can only proceed to open it when she's confident that it was safe. It was without question that safety awareness was paramount in this family regardless of the profession or how powerful they are. Anyone can easily die in this apocalyptic era due to a slight oversight. Zhou Qi took the file bag with caution and after a thorough test and inspection, she turned her gaze towards Zhang Yi and confirms that there was no problem with the file bag. Zhang Yi used tweezers to pick open the file bag, and then carefully took out the documents inside. There was only one piece of paper inside, which was a handwritten letter to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi put the letter on the table, put on a tactical helmet, and then leaned over to read it. What was written inside was very simple. The general idea was that Sun Jiaming, Chun Liangyu, and Gu Hongdai proposed to help them defend Tianhai City. The letter stated that Tianhai City has now experienced a painful war, with a large number of people killed and unable to fight against local forces. As friendly residents, the 3 major forces in Days City are willing to come to assist in defense in a humanitarian spirit, so the recipient of this letter should not refuse. After reading the content of the letter, a meaningful smile appeared on the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth. Then he began to laugh. Zhang Yi couldn't help laughing, and his laughter became louder and louder like a madman. Although the reason was absurd, it was still plausible for these idiots from Days City to use to come to Tianhai City. What a high-sounding reason. These people are really interesting to be able to write such a proposal. If I guess correctly, they also worked in a unit before. Hearing Zhang Yi's laughter, Zhou Qi leaned over as Zhang Yi stepped aside for her to read the content of the letter. I have to say, these guys are really smart. If they use this method, even if the Jiangnan district wants to blame them in the future, they will have a reason to deal with it. After reading the letter, Zhou Qi turned to Zhang Yi, and as she took off her disposable mask, she asked what they were going to do. Zhang Yi picked the letter back up with his tweezers and led Zhou Qi out of the infirmary. He decided to let the others take a look together first before making any decision. Zhang Yi came to the lounging hall with Zhou Qi trailing behind. He presented the letter in front of everyone present and motioned for them to take a look. The moment they read the content of the letter, the expressions on their faces became very strange, because they all felt very disgusted. The factions of Days City were clearly coming to seize the territories and resources of Tianhai City, but they're purposefully encroaching under the banner of humanitarian assistance. Isn't this just wanting to be the boss of the entire Tianhai City? This is simply too despicable. Lu Karen clenched her fist in anger. She was young and didn't really understand the hidden meaning behind the letter. They might as well just act like bandits and rob people openly instead of disgusting us. Liang Yu shook her head slightly, smiling and staring at Lu Karen. It was obvious that Lu Karen, a young girl who was not very experienced in the world, would naturally not understand such methods. Zhou Qi stepped forward and grabbed her hand. She then points to the letter with a smile and tried to explain it to her. Karen, there are some things that everyone knows, but the surface work, although ridiculous sometimes, still needs to be done first in order to put on a show. According to them, they are just here to assist Tianhai City in defense. However, this assistance can't be in vain, right? The areas where troops needed to be stationed also need to be provided with the supplies necessary for their lives. With her arms leisurely folded, Lu Karen rolled her eyes with disdain. So, what you're saying is that if we don't give them anything, they would still try to snatch it away anyway. How will they explain it then? Zhou Qi shook her head slightly. They will say that we were immoral first, and their people had no choice but to take action. At most, they can just apologize after robbing the supplies. If we can't stand it and attack them, they will fight us with justification and say they are acting in self-defense. They think they can take over Tianhai City steadily, and as long as things are over quickly, they will use the above reasons to explain to the Jiangnan district. By the time the dust has settled, the Jiangnan district will probably still be busy dealing with the Ronin incident in Linhai City, so their only convenient option is to turn a blind eye and recognize their management rights in Tianhai City. After listening to this, Lu Karen was so angry that her face turned red. Doesn't it mean that they are robbers, but they can still call themselves good people? It's actually us who have been wronged. How ridiculous! They are obviously the robbers, and how can we be in the wrong to resist? Lu Karen may be right, but Zhang Yi knew it didn't matter. No one gives a shit in this situation, because only strength determines who's right at the end of the day. Zhang Yi placed the letter back in his alternate space and responded in a deep voice. It's just an excuse. Whoever wins is right. This gives the Jiangnan district a step, so that they don't have to slap them in the face when the Superpower Federation was just established. The Jiangnan district can only acquiesce. You don't have to pay attention to these things. They are just very simple language art. That's right. The simple understanding is that the three major organizations in Days City require Zhang Yi and his team to surrender unconditionally. In that case, they can still reserve some living space and supplies for Zhang Yi and his team. This made Liang Yu stare at Zhang Yi with a stern look. Her eyes were as sharp as a knife. She was angry at the shamelessness of the mutant forces in Days City. Zhang Yi, are we going to fight them? Yes, we must fight and beat them up. Teach them a lesson. These shameless guys actually dared to look down on us. We must definitely teach them a lesson. Chunlei and Uncle Yu said this with their raised fist. The two, like everyone, were filled with righteous indignation. Zhang Yi nodded slightly, satisfied with his team's attitude. Of course we have to fight, he replied. But the question is how to fight. The three major forces in Days City may be as powerful as our major forces before the zombie siege. If we reject their proposal outright, they will understand that we want to fight them to the end, so we must be prepared. Why not paralyze them first and pretend to agree to their suggestion? Yang Xinxin smiled, already following Zhang Yi's way of thinking. I understand what you're getting at, big brother. We should pretend to agree to their demands so that they will be careless, and then lure them into a trap we prepared in advance. A trap in which they cannot escape even if they wanted to. Zhang Yi nodded approvingly. Yang Xinxin could always guess what he was thinking. That's right, what we have to do now is to achieve this victory at the lowest cost. Uncle Yu then asked Zhang Yi what they should do. After all, you always make the arrangements. Zhang Yi thought for a moment and decided to call Xiao Honglian and the others over. They were all in the same boat now, so Zhang Yi needed to let them participate in this matter. The mutants from the three major forces combined are still considerable, and they must be used. As for the battle plan, Zhang Yi actually had a rough outline in his mind. After the conflict with Days City, he had been thinking about how to destroy these guys. There are at least 3 plans in his mind, but the current situation is what he wants most. The next step was to set up a trap and let these self-righteous fuckers fall into it. A while later, 3 vehicles arrived at Zhang Yi's shelter. Of course, they were none other than Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian and Chen Jingguan, and they all arrived at Luck Manor about the same time. This was their first time they were entering Zhang Yi's shelter. Seeing this magnificent house and feeling the paradise-like living environment inside, they were extremely envious comparing their situations. The moment they were invited inside, Zhang Yi welcomed them politely. Then, he proceeds to entertain them in the living room and ask them to sit down enthusiastically. Zhou Qier served them a glass of hot water when they took their seat on the sofa. Xiao Honglian seemed to have noticed something and asked anxiously, "Zhang Yi, is there any movement of the mutant forces in Days City?" The moment she asked this question, Xing Tian and Chen Jingguan's eyes widened a little in surprise. Their expressions became nervous. Zhang Yi calmly took a sip of his hot glass of water, glanced at them and said lightly, "You guessed right, it is indeed about them." He briefly explained to them the message sent by the 3 major factions in Days City. After listening to Zhang Yi's explanation, the 3 leaders were shocked and angry. Now they have no capital to compete with the 3 major factions in Days City. Chen Jingguan swallowed heavily and asked Zhang Yi in a pleading tone, "Boss, you won't ignore us, right?" Xiao Honglian couldn't help blushing profusely when she referred to Zhang Yi as boss. She coughed slightly. "Boss, you have to help us make a decision on this matter." For a moment there, Zhang Yi was taken aback, staring skeptically at Xiao Honglian. Her entire demeanor was a far cry from the proud and aloof leader she had been portrayed to be. Zhang Yi thought she was really honest. However, she changed her words quickly at the critical moment. He took another sip of his hot water and slowly replied, "I have already thought of the plan for this matter, and there is not much you guys need to do. You just need to cooperate with my actions." Indeed, with the strength of the 3 major base organizations, the role they needed to play in this operation was only a supporting role. The rest and more important role was up to Zhang Yi to perform. The first thing to do is to paralyze the other party, make them careless. We must pretend to compromise and trick them into Tianhai City first. As for what to do later, I will tell you when the time comes. In short, for now, do a good job of maintaining a good defense, and cooperate with me in acting. Zhang Yi did not reveal too much about the plan to them. The 3 base organizations had to just accept it. After all, Zhang Yi could not guarantee their loyalty, so he still had some reservations. The 3 listened quietly and agreed resolutely to act according to Zhang Yi's instructions. However, they still looked a little worried and tried repeatedly to confirm whether Zhang Yi would protect them if something happened. Zhang Yi could understand their feelings, so he made an exception and gave them many verbal promises. In the past, he would have scoffed at any verbal promise, but now these 3 bases were in danger, and they would hold on to any possibility of protecting themselves like a life-saving straw. On the other hand, after sending the letter to Zhang Yi, the 3 factions in Days City weren't particularly interested in Zhang Yi's reply, simply because it didn't matter if a reply came or not. They had already assembled their troops and could set out to dominate Tianhai City at any time. However, they received an email from Zhang Yi not long after. The mailbox left for Zhang Yi was shared by the 3 forces, so they decided to read the received email together in their conference room at their headquarters. In the email, Zhang Yi extended a polite greeting to them. "Greetings to the 3 major factions in Days City. Today, I received your letter, which clearly showed that you were plotting to seize the resources of Tianhai City. On behalf of several major forces in this city, I firmly oppose this approach. We have the ability to protect our homeland and do not need any external forces to intervene. I hope you can restrain yourself and not resort to violence. Otherwise, we will report to the Jiangnan Regional Headquarters and let them handle the matter. If you can be friendly neighbors, we can give you some resources as a friendly gesture." After reading this email, Sun Jiaming laughed so hard that his face was crooked. Did Zhang Yi write this email? So funny. Chen Liangyu and Gu Hongdia's reactions after seeing the email were similar to Sun Jiaming's. He's obviously scared to death, but he's trying to save face. Did he really think he can scare us by using the Jiangnan region? What a naive idiot. The 3 couldn't stop laughing just thinking of Zhang Yi's look of being scared while pretending in the email. It was really hilarious. Sun Jiaming's contempt for Zhang Yi became more and more serious. Such a guy, I'm afraid if you scare him again, he will definitely compromise. Gu Hongdai was still laughing so hard that she covered her stomach and didn't straighten up for a long time. This little brother is so cute. I've decided that after we take over Tianhai City, I'll let him be my little underling who will tell me jokes when I'm bored. Gu Hongdai smiled coquettishly, but there was a faint devious thoughts in her eyes. He'd better not be ungrateful, right? The three were emboldened by the email and genuinely thought they could conquer Tianhai City without difficulty. Chen Liangyu told Gu Hongdai to not be distracted by trivial matters like that, because it wouldn't matter whether Zhang Yi is cute or not. If he really doesn't know to appreciate the kindness offered, they would take action. Hearing this, Gu Hongdai replied coquettishly to Chen Liangyu's comment. I don't think it's necessary. If we can avoid fighting, we should try not to fight. His attitude seems like he's wetting his pants. We can scare him again. There was a hint of deep meaning in Gu Hongdia's eyes. After all, it has been so long since the end of the world. Everyone who is still alive now doesn't want to die. Chen Liangyu just casually replied. I also think we can talk to him again. Besides, is there a possibility that he is acting? Chen Liangyu was an extremely cautious person. He will not conclude that Zhang Yi was weak and incompetent just because of an email. That kind of person cannot dominate Tianhai City. However, they do have limited information about Tianhai City, and they don't know about Zhang Yi's brilliant achievements. Sun Jiaming frowned, then sneered, Chen Liangyu, you are too cautious. Whether he is pretending or not, the weakness of Tianhai City is a well-known fact. Our army will sweep away everything. Chen Liangyu replied calmly. It's not that simple. We'd better talk to Zhang Yi again. If it can be resolved peacefully, no one wants to pay the price of bloodshed and sacrifice. Gu Hongdai stared at Chen Liangyu and pondered over his words briefly. We will talk to him again and let him hand over his territory and resources obediently. Then we can consider sparing their lives. After all, as long as there is hope to live, no one will willingly seek death. Let's not push them to the edge. Chen Liangyu and Gu Hongdai agreed on this matter, so Sun Jiaming had no choice but to also agree. Okay, we will talk to him again. But we have to let him know that our patience is limited and we don't have time to argue with him. The three reached a consensus and decided to communicate with Zhang Yi again. However, during this time, unbeknownst to these three dimwits, Zhang Yi's top hacker, Yang Xinxin, had already broken through the network firewall of their organization, just like passing through a wall woven by spider webs, without any difficulty, and obtained all their information. The sent email was the perfect Trojan horse. Not every force has such a powerful network security system. Tianhai City was one of the cities with the most developed information technology in the country, a place for some powerful programmers working in several major bases. But in the neighboring cities like Days City, not so much. Back at the shelter, Yang Xinxin was ecstatic with this achievement, proving to herself again how she is indeed the best hacker among elite hackers. She immediately brought the intelligence of the three major forces in Days City to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was sitting cross-legged on the sofa in the lounging hall, barefoot, wearing his usual set of indoor clothes. The laptop was placed on his cross legs, and Yang Xinxin was sitting next to him, introducing him to the information she had obtained. According to the current intelligence, the scale of these three forces is not small. Although not as good as the five major forces in Tianhai City during its heyday, the gap is not too big. After all, Days City has a permanent population of more than 8 million, and supplies were relatively sufficient. They have room to develop their own strength. Zhang Yi's fingers slide on the screen, carefully flipping through the specific combat power intelligence of the three major factions. The most interesting thing is that they not only have their own internal intelligence, but also have statistical data on their development since the end of the world. This made Zhang Yi gain a lot. After all, no one would clearly record the abilities and weaknesses of their leaders in their own database. The first ability user Zhang Yi checked was Sun Jiaming. After reading through his information, Zhang Yi finally realized why Qin Jingguan was beaten by him so easily. It turns out he ignored his external defense and went straight for his internal organs, completely restraining him. It seems that Qin Jingguan was not that useless. This just got interesting. Finally, let the games begin.